John, these people respect you, they admire you, they see more in you than a medical deity. You're a real doctor with a heart and a soul and a commitment to ethical concerns. When I asked you a few weeks ago, what is your main concern now that you're really retirement age, you said, Hans, if it's possible, could you talk to the board? And could you give me 10 minutes to share with the audience what I really feel in my heart we need to take a look at and maybe embrace as an American College of Lifestyle Medicine? And I want to give you those 10 minutes.
Can I have the clicker?
Yes.
Okay.
Are we on?
Well, thank you. Obviously, I'm among friends. And your accomplishments can be said in just a few words that Mary expressed to me while we were walking down the hall. There are so many people here. I can't believe it, because when we started, as you know, there were so few. And you have built an army. You built an army of people that will change the world. And that's what I have seen happen. And now this army, I'd like to say, is poised to do some things that are world-changing. I'd like to have a chance to share with you some of the thoughts that have been troubling me for the last 20 years, which I hope I have a chance to express over the next 10 or 20. One thing I hope is that my grandchildren don't say someday, Grandpa, why didn't you try harder? Now, I'd like to talk to you about the future and global warming. And I know this is a very emotional topic, and you all have very strong opinions on it. And so, therefore, rather than proposing this as a possibility for this a huge army of dedicated professionals to take on as part of their mission, I've decided what I'm going to do is a parody of a new college called the American College of Life Medicine. The American College of Life Medicine. So if you become offended or don't like what I say about what I think is important, and you think that I am in some way misrepresenting my association with the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, I would like to tell you, I am talking to you tonight about the American College of Life Medicine. Well, okay. Beautiful. Let's go back one. Can you take me back one? Thank you. Montaigne, and I have this as a quote in the beginning of my book, McDougall's Medicine, A Challenging Second Opinion. Montaigne said 500 years ago how an idea is developed. He said, first they say it's probably not true, they deny it. And then what happens is people say, when the proof of the truth is beyond any doubt, they say it's true, but it's not important. And then the final step in the development of an idea is people say, well, the truth and importance have been realized, but it's no longer news. We've been doing this all along. We've always known this. The development of an idea. This all started about 15 to 20 years ago. The idea that we were in big trouble in terms of climate change. And this represents what Montaigne tried to tell us as to what's happening currently in terms of climate change. It wasn't too many years ago that people considered climate change a hoax. There are very few deniers left. I can think of a couple, but I won't mention their names. Today is the second point. This is where we are now. The second point of Montaigne's idea of the development of an idea. And that is, we say that we understand this, and it's important, but it's just too costly. And then finally, tomorrow, according to Montaigne, in the development of an idea, we'll say, it's true and important, and we've known all along, but it's too late, we can't do anything about it. We're no longer ahead of our time, ladies and gentlemen, and certainly this conference proves it. Everybody recognizes this is not a hoax. And we pay no attention, if not ridicule, to people who still stand by that idea. I was first made aware of the problem by Al Gore in his life-changing documentary, The Inconvenient Truth. Al Gore, at that time, when he made the presentation, initially in 2006, he talked about the climate. He talked about how where we are right now is going to be on under 20 feet of water someday soon. He told us about the importance of transportation, about handling electricity, et cetera, but he didn't say anything about the food. Now, that may have been in part to the fact that he was a black Angus farmer at that time, and his diet, I believe his personal diet, was very much an American diet. He, after that, when he realized the importance of food in terms of environment, he became vegan, and you can see he lost a lot of weight. But he made a new documentary called the sequel to The Inconvenient Truth. He again fails to mention food as a playing card in terms of solving our environmental future. Probably the most influential thing that's happened in the last year is Greta Thunberg. She gave a presentation to the United Nations. We decided not to show it tonight, but I encourage all of you to hear this 15-year-old girl ask why adults have not taken the bold step of solving our climate problems and have left it to us children. And she's launched a worldwide movement that I think will change the world. It certainly focused my attention. But I want to mention that Greta, even though she's a vegan, was not able to convince her mother to be fully vegan. And during her presentation to the United Nations and every other presentation I've seen, she has not mentioned diet to any great extent as important in solving the problems of climate change. During the Republican national debates, as far as I remember, the climate was never mentioned once during the 2004 and 2008 debates. It was never mentioned during the Republican debates. During the Democratic, again, this is not a political point, it's just to bring things into perspective. In the Democratic debates that are going on right now, we have Senator Cory Booker, who's a vegan, but when asked, should people follow your diet, he said no. Yang, he said, so it's good for the environment, it's good for your health if you eat less meat, but you can't force people's eating changes on them. We know it's true. The importance is known, but we can't ask people to do it. A book I would encourage you to read. It really summarizes the association between food and the environment. And it's called We Are the Weather. Probably 20 times in the book, he mentions that he has not been able to give up dairy and eggs and admits to an occasional hamburger. This is such an emotionally, politically charged subject that nobody wants to talk about it. Here we are today. The excuse, at least from this character, is that we know it's true, we know it's important, but we can't do anything about it because it's too costly. And the highest estimate that I've heard is it will cost $44 trillion to keep this planet alive. When I first started reading about climate change, I read the book by Thomas Friedman, and he said that it would cost as much money to solve climate change as it had cost us to do the Manhattan Project, which is to develop the atomic bombs. And he said that's just prohibitive. We could never spend that amount of money. Now what people say is it's too costly because it would cost as much money as the Marshall Plan, which reestablished Europe during World War II. It would cost $103 billion in today's dollars. And that's just too expensive to save the world and every living species on it. Well, Bill Gates, he's an environmentalist. He's done a lot in this movement. He could pay for both of those travesties himself out of his own pocket, if that's what it really cost. I think what brought us, most of us, to full attention is the report that just came out in September from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. They were very direct. Now, this panel gathers information and makes recommendations. It has no power of enforcement. But what they told us is that we have 12 years left. 12 years. So, all right. I was reading a book on the way over here, and it kind of put it into perspective the way I think we ought to be looking at this. And all of you know of Stephen Covey and the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He said that we face the reality of the current circumstances and of the future projections, but we also face the reality that we have the power to choose a positive response to those circumstances and positions. You know, as bad as things are, I can tell you hopelessness has never crossed my mind. I get up every day and I look at Mary and I said, what are we going to do today to make a positive difference? I think we can do it. I really do. But we have to focus on the problem. The problem's the food. The problem, as far as environmental change and the opportunities to fix it, lie with the food. And the food we're talking about is animal products. If you see let's take a look at this brief chart. It delivers the message that I want you to hear. And that is that as far as CO2 production, it's the animal foods that are the main cause. I read estimates that beef is 100 times more destructive to the environment than potatoes. They talk about rice being bad for the environment because the bacteria on the roots, they produce methane. They're bad for the environment compared to what? They hardly make any impact at all. When Livestock's Long Shadow came out, which was a 407-page report by the United Nations, funded by the World Food Bank, or the World Bank, they told us that 18% of the greenhouse gases were caused by livestock. And they compared that to transportation, which was 14%, and we were all overwhelmed by the possibility that food could contribute this much. Well, I was so moved by this and by Al Gore's presentation, The Inconvenient Truth, and the fact that Al Gore had not personally addressed the issue of food, either back then or in 2017, that I wrote an article called An Inconvenient Truth, We Are Eating the Planet to Death. And that was in 2006, so that would be almost 15 years ago. Every conference that I put on, and we would put on 2 advanced study weekends every year, and I invited many of you as speakers, I would bring in people that had a point of view that I thought my listeners would benefit from. And so one year I brought in Robert Goodland. Robert Goodland was the environmental advisor for 23 years for the World Food Bank. And Robert Goodland gave a presentation which is on my website, which you can easily find, which I would encourage you to listen to. Pretty much everything we're talking about today, Robert Goodland was talking about back then in 2013. Robert Goodland told us, first of all, that the United Nations Livestock's Long Shadow really left out too many factors and underestimated the impact of animal agriculture on our environment. And then when they recalculated the whole thing, they decided that it was a contribution of greater than 50% came from agriculture due to animal production, livestock production. So Robert Goodland came to our program and told us that they had recalculated, the World Watch Institute, and experts today, including the book that I showed you a couple minutes ago, agree with his assessment that over half the greenhouse gases are caused by what we eat, particularly the animal foods. Robert Goodwin has died since. And then we have the Eat Lancet Commission. And the Eat Lancet Commission came out this January and told us that we don't have much time, and that if we eat mostly vegetables and legumes and grains and nuts and limit our red meat to once a week, that we have a chance. So as I say, we all believe this is not a hoax. Let's talk about what we're really giving up to save the planet. What are we giving up? We're giving up yellow and brown food that is malodorous, distasteful, expensive to persons and planet. It's sickening and fattening. The only way you can eat it is to cover it up with steak sauce or ketchup or so much salt that that's all you can taste. That's what we're giving up to save the planet. No. If we could only save the planet for something important. Is the world worth saving? No. Civilized people take care of their children. All right, my recommendation has been to eat a starch-based diet as far as changing our future. And what I suggest is that people eat approximately 90% of their diet as starch. Why have I come to that recommendation? Because that's what people used to eat, is a diet that was 90% starch. If you look at history, what you'll find that is over 99.999% of people obtained the bulk of their calories from starch throughout all of human history. You look at Central America, we have the people of the corn, the Aztecs and the Mayans, who lived with civilizations for 1,300 years that were based on corn. You go a little further south, you see the Incas in the Andes. They lived on potatoes, except for when they went to battle, they switched to quinoa because it was lighter to carry. If you think of Asia, you think of people who eat rice. There was an article in the 2013 New England Journal of Medicine where they talked about the people in China. And before 1980, 90% of their diet was white rice. And fewer than 1% of the population had diabetes, and fewer than 1% was overweight. In this 2013 New England Journal of Medicine article, they talked about how now China has a population where 12% of the people are frankly diabetic and half are pre-diabetic. So this is what you have to eat instead. You have to eat starch in various forms. Foods that we naturally love because of our taste buds, our sense of smell and sight. Comfort food. So the card we have to play, and what I'd like to share with you, and I'd like to help you understand, is that that card cannot be played without ACLM. But it can be played with the army that has been developed here, or the new college of the American College of Life Medicine. The impact of diet on the environment is huge. We have many reports. Here are three of them that just recently came out. They compared non-vegetarian diets to a reference diet, which is actually a heart-healthy diet. And they found that the semi-vegetarian and vegetarian diets dramatically reduced the production of CO2. Another recent study that was published in PLOS, where they compared a generally healthy diet, now this wasn't the typical American diet, to a vegetarian and a vegan diet. And they got a tremendous reduction, as much as 70 to 80% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions in the vegans. And then the most recent report on the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science told us that greenhouse gases account for 29 to 70% of the emissions. And guess what? It's vegans that can reduce the production of greenhouse gases by 70% from agriculture. Right now, Al Gore and our politicians are planning on us inventing our way out of this problem. This, to me, seems similar to expecting aliens to land on planet Earth and absorb all of our carbon dioxide and save us. We're making progress, but the progress we're making is going to take decades to get solar power, to get the energy we need, to get the transportation that we need that doesn't rely on fossil fuels. And I would like to mention that there's probably few people in this room who have the technical skills to be involved in these areas to save the planet. But what you are experts on food. And food we can change overnight. I mean, think about it. If we could get Prime Minister Modi of India, Xi of China, Mr. Putin of Russia, Mr. Trump of the US, and President Obama of the United States, if we could get them to all stand up, if we could get them all to stand up and tell them what the problem is, what the solution is, we could fix this overnight, or at least make a major impact, and we could save the planet. But it can't be done alone. And at the risk of offending a few people, but hopefully embracing the understanding and love that I've received from many of you, you will find this a worthwhile project to add to ACLM's efforts. Because there's nobody else. If ACLM doesn't do it, who's going to do it? I mean, who else is dedicated to food besides you folks? So thank you very much for the 4th Annual ACL Lifetime Achievement Award. Thank you. So do I? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. John, it's a big challenge that you left with us tonight. It has not been a major focused attention for the organization, but you have given us a challenge to give more thought to it. I know you're concerned about your children. I know you're concerned about your grandchildren. I'm too. But we need to do something.
But Hans, I just want to point out the reality to all of you, and that is if we don't solve this problem, nothing else matters. I mean, all the work you've done with ACLM, you know, all the effort that Susan and Hans and everybody else has put in to educating our doctors to give our populations better health, it's not going to matter unless we get this one fixed.